Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the North Node moving into Pisces and the South Node moving into Virgo. Now, we already had a lunar eclipse on this axis, even though we haven't moved into the nodes yet. That's not going to happen until January. So we're already starting to get an idea of where these eclipses and the nodes are going to play out in our lives for a lot of people, especially if you have any of your top 3 in Virgo or Pisces. You've probably already started seeing the themes that are going to come up in your life over the next year and a half, starting in January, but we will have eclipses happening on that axis until February of 2027. So even though the nodes will be leaving in July of 2026, we're still going to be dealing with these issues until 2027. So let's get into it. If you want some extra context, the last time that the nodes were in these signs, North Node in Pisces, South Node in Virgo, was June 2006 to December 2007, as well as December 87 to May of 1989. So if you think back to what was going on in your life that was pushing you toward growth, you might get some more information about what the themes may be this time around. But of course, there are a lot of different transits during this time, so it's not going to be exactly the same, but the themes might be similar for you in your own personal chart. When the North Node moves into a sign, it is asking us to embrace the potentials of that sign. And when the South Node moves into a sign, it's asking us to release the shadows of that sign. Now, the nodes of the moon, which are also called Rahu and Ketu, Rahu being the North Node, Ketu being the South Node, which I may refer to them that way because it's just easier. They are both working toward our soul's evolution. They're doing them in different ways when they transit. So it's not as simple as we want Piscean things and we don't want Virgoan things. That is the nature of duality that the nodes present to us, but we are asked to become non-dual about this and recognize that during this time, Pisces qualities are not good and Virgo qualities are bad. Rather, how can we get the best out of both of those signs, but we do that in different ways depending on where the nodes are. Rahu, or the North Node, has an expanding quality and it has a grasping quality. So in Indian mythology and astrology, Rahu is the dragon with no head, dragon head with no body, and Ketu is the body with no head. Rahu is also at home in the 6th house of worldly affairs, the earthy house of the 6th house, whereas Ketu is at home in the 12th house of moksha or liberation. Now, I am traditionally a Western astrologer, but I study and use the techniques of Vedic astrology as well as evolutionary astrology all the time. I don't believe that there's one that's better than the other. It's just knowing how to use them and knowing what they're good for you. My understanding of the nodes really evolved when I learned about Rahu and Ketu, rather than just seeing North Node is what I'm going towards, South Node is what I'm rejecting. North Node, like I said, is an expanding and a grasping energy, whereas the South Node is a constricting and a releasing energy. So a lot of people say that when you have the South Node transiting your planets, it's more difficult. And I would probably say that's true because the South Node, Ketu, is about liberation. And if you do not have a very spiritual nature, it definitely feels difficult because it provides a sense of detachment from those qualities and a sense of loss. Even if on the worldly level it doesn't seem like a loss, although a lot of times it is, but for some people it doesn't come out that way. It just feels like a detachment from something, and that even though you have something that maybe you always thought you wanted, it's not fulfilling you in the ways that you thought it would, and so that creates pain and suffering. And Rahu is much more because of its worldly nature, it tends to be easier for us to deal with Rahu instincts, although they may feel out of control at times. And this is very dependent on your own chart and what sign they're residing in. And the houses and the signs, in my opinion, are not equal. But if we think about the fact that Ketu likes to be in the 12th house, which is the Pisces house, and Rahu likes to be in the 6th house, which is the Virgo house. We've kind of got a flip here, right? And the way that I can see this idea of Rahu that is more worldly, or likes to be more worldly in nature, going into a more mystical sign like Pisces, the number one thing that I'm feeling that is going to be happening is, yes, there is going to be a trend towards spirituality and mysticism, which love that personally. And I also, though, see that a lot of people could be using spirituality and mysticism as a way to attain their own goals that may not be rooted in integrity, and almost like what I'm feeling is spiritual, like fake spiritual gurus. That's the kind of energy I'm feeling a lot that I think we're going to be seeing. But we're going to go over the themes, and I actually have some goals that we want to look at as well. So let's go through some of the themes now. I just wanted to make sure that we understand that it's not like Virgo bad, Pisces good. It's much more nuanced than that, and it can really go either way. So sometimes when we have Rahu in affecting one of our planets, it may be easier because there's not that detachment, but we feel very attached to the things that we're doing, and we may neglect other important aspects of our life because we're chasing after this Rahuvian goal. Let's talk about some of the themes of Pisces and Virgo. Some themes that we might come up with are criticism versus compassion, learning versus experiencing, practical versus idealistic. I think that's a big one. This is also an axis of service. So a lot of changes to healthcare happen actually when these nodes are in Pisces and Virgo historically. So interesting to see how that's going to happen. But service can be healthy and amazing, but we can also, with both of these signs, move into martyrdom, which is not healthy for anybody. Not the person giving the service and not the person receiving the service. We're also going to see themes of logic versus intuition. And I kind of said, this is, about like healthcare, but health, and that's physical versus emotional. Our mind it's so easy to say, okay, criticism bad, compassion good, or, learning bad, experiencing good. It's more about, when is criticism helping us grow to our highest evolutionary path, and when is it hurting us? And because the South Node is in the sign that is known for being more critical than Pisces, what areas of my life do I need to shed criticism that is hurting me or hurting other people, and embrace more compassion? And likewise, if you are overly compassionate and do not have enough boundaries, which is a Piscean quality that can happen, being more critical or discerning may be actually what you need. And so embracing compassion in a way that's more holistic, and not in a way of abandoning the self for others. Martyrdom. And so for a lot of spiritual people and people who give spiritually, I think this is going to be really big. We're going to see this theme a lot for you guys of, in what areas am I giving past my boundaries, and where do I need to be more discerning or have more boundaries? That's what Virgo is here to do with the criticism oftentimes. Yes, it is to help other people improve. Virgos really like to help people improve, and they generally do it through criticism, which criticism in itself isn't negative, right? You can have constructive criticism, but sometimes they can be overly critical, and that's not going to help the other person. The other person is not going to perceive that as being helpful. Whereas Pisces, when they, on a high level as an archetype, when they are of service, rather than being critical, they like to hold space. They like to sit in the suffering with you. And so that's so beautiful for a lot of people, especially in this day and age. I feel like we are missing this element of being seen and heard, and people just want information. They want all of the information, and are missing this connection that happens when somebody can just sit with you and hold whatever you're feeling and be there with you. Now, the downside of that, once again, is that sometimes we can move into those boundaries being so evasive and elusive, because that can be very Piscean, that we don't have our own distinct boundaries, and then we're holding space for everybody else, but then we're hurting, we're suffering. So I'm not going to go through that with every single one of these, but just so you can see how this non-dualistic thinking can play out when we're looking at these themes. I do want to touch a little bit on the practical. Actually, you know what? We'll talk about that when we talk about the goals that we can have during this time. So during this transit, January 2025 to July 2026, we're going to talk about what signs are going to be the most affected, but because of the nodal axis being activated through eclipses, even when the nodes move, this is really going to be affecting these people from September of this year until February of 2027. So the most affected people are going to be people who have Virgo or Pisces, sun, moon, or rising. And I think that kind of speaks for itself. You can also say if you have a stellium, obviously in either of these signs, you're going to be affected because they're going to go over each of those planets or points. Also, if you have the nodes on the Virgo Pisces axis, whether that means that you have the North Node in Virgo, South Node in Pisces, or the opposite, you are going to be either going through a North Node return, if you have North Node in Pisces natally, or a North Node or a nodal reversal if you have the North Node in Virgo natally. So when the nodes return to where they were in the birth chart, it's a time of massive evolution. It's almost like the nodes are coming to really push you towards your soul's evolutionary growth during this lifetime. We're always moving towards that, but when the nodes return to where they are in our birth chart, or at least even the signs that they were in the birth chart, the nodes will not mess around, and they'll do what's necessary. And that may seem difficult at times depending on how much growth you've had in your life up to that point, but it is what you are here to do. That's why, honestly, like I say this more so with the South Node, but regardless, having a more spiritual outlook helps most people. They recognize that their soul is trying to evolve to something, and that's why they're going through the things that they're going through. Now, when you have a nodal reversal, if you think about, that means in this scenario, you would have natally a North Node in Virgo, and the South Node is going over that. So what happens a lot of times during North Node reversals is that, I keep saying North Node, nodal reversals, is that you are maybe moving towards something, and when this reversal happens, you recognize, oh no, that's not where I want to be heading, actually. If you even just think about the fact that the South Node is going over your North Node. So generally, the North Node is embracing something, but for you, it's embracing the highest potentials of areas of your life that you're trying to naturally move away from. And so it's going to be really clear about showing you, what do I need to release and which direction do I need to move into now? And obviously this is going to be colored by what house it's falling in for you. So I already talked about when this last occurred, but here's a visual. I'm a visual learner, so in case you need a visual as well, it's up here. Now, I want to talk briefly about the relation to the nodes in 2020, because in 2020, the nodes moved into Gemini and Sagittarius. North Node went into Gemini, South Node in Sagittarius. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, just like Virgo is. So Mercury is a fact gatherer. It's an information gatherer. Mercury works differently in Gemini and Virgo, definitely. There are differences because they're different signs. However, it is the fact gatherer, and it's like taking snippets, fact here, detail here. And Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, like Sagittarius. But in Pisces, it's even more broad-minded. It's encompassing everything. And so when I think about what's happened since 2020, and that year was such a year of gathering information and disseminating information. I mean, I got a TikTok earlier this year for the first time because I was like, let me try it out. And I thought it was kind of cool, but it was way too overstimulating for me. And I know my age is showing, But I also feel like just it doesn't match with me. It's just, it was like overload. I had it for like not even a month, and I was like, I cannot do this. I don't know how people are doing this. And that's not to say if you like TikTok, it's bad. That is to say, though, that since 2020, we've seen a blow up of TikToks, Reels, YouTube Shorts, and so much information of all of the different things that have been happening in our world and all these different dualistic viewpoints, right? We've become more and more divided over things that have been happening in our world. At some point, there is too much information. Like, truly. And this is coming from your friendly Gemini sun, who is ruled by Mercury. And I made a video earlier this year about how nothing is resonating for a lot of people. And I truly feel like we are burnt out over information. And so when we get into Pisces, like I said, it's going from knowing something to understanding it and embodying it and integrating it. I wrote 2024 very transitional, and I wrote that and I just laughed because in essence, all of life is transitional, right? So, but we are in this very intense, simmering pot right now of transition. And 2027 is really when we're going to start seeing things shift, but it's still going to take time, right? 2024, though, feels like for me that a lot of people had to get to this point of like, oh my God, I have so much information and I need to do something with it. I need to move forward with it in some way. This is also, though, very much related to the Saturn-Jupiter square, in my opinion, that's happening in December. Now, we already had the opening square in August of this year, and I made a video about it, I think. But I'm going to make a video about the one in December because in that video, originally, I talked about how this one is going to be different because of the retrogrades that are happening than the one in August, obviously. It's going to have a different flavor. And I do think that part of that Saturn-Jupiter square that's going to happen December 19th, I believe, is very much people desiring and being pushed to integrate and embody what they have learned or the awareness that they've had for some time now. So I said I would talk a little bit about the goal, and once again, not all inclusive, but these are the things that came to my mind immediately. I don't want to overwhelm you guys and tell you guys 30 goals, right? Making the mystical practical / making the ideological reality. On the themes, I talked about how this could be very much like reality versus idealistic. And Pisces can be very idealistic, and it's a water sign, and it's Jupiter, and then we have Neptune even, and then we have Virgo, which is meticulous, detail-oriented, practical. It's Earth sign. And so in what ways can we make the mystical practical? Like I was saying before, I think that the North Node in Pisces might make some people ungrounded in their spirituality. And that can be very harmful, especially if they are then being of service to others from that space of being ungrounded. So making the mystical practical is going to be it would be a good theme to focus on trying to attain. Like I said, the nodes are going to affect everybody differently, but that, as well as how can I make this idealistic ideology that I have practical in my realistic life? And in what ways do I need to change my expectations? That's another big thing. The reason why Virgos can be critical is because they have very high expectations and they're always looking to improve themselves and the people around them, which is so beautiful. And also, it can be taken to the extreme. But Pisces is asking us to look at what we love in the world and in what ways can we use that Virgoan qualities to bring it down to earth and ground it so that we can actually start living our idealistic lives. In a lot of ways, that can mean very small things, right? I always say, and once again, this is one of the things I could see happening is that it's always the little actions that end up compounding into something really big. It's so easy for us to want to jump into like ayahuasca or doing these big retreats for 2 months. And I'm not saying those things are bad, but I know that they're not the only way. Getting up every day and meditating for 5 minutes compounds. You know, you may not see the effects every single day, but then one day you wake up and you're like, holy crap, what happened? Or you have this vision during your meditation, and all of a sudden things are just massively different in your life from that. And, or every day you decide to meal prep, and then you look 6 months later and your life has completely changed over this one small detail that you decided to change in your life. And now you're able to become more spiritual because your vessel is in a better place, is a more healthy place. So it's really about this like body, mind, and the mystical spiritual side, and how the body and that spiritual side are coexisting together, and how we can be mystical and spiritual but have that grounded in reality, in service, in a way that honors our own boundaries but also comes from a place of love and compassion for others. And to also remember that even if we're feeling very critical, or we're feeling like our reality isn't that great, to draw upon the Piscean idealism that something can be better for us. And we have Saturn in Pisces for a little bit during this time. And during that time, it is like Saturn could help us build this. One other thing that I want to mention too is that during this time, because the nodes are dualistic, and a lot of people will fall into that, some people will also completely reject spirituality and really want to focus on just the facts. Now, I want to just say though that the North Node being in Pisces is asking us to release that kind of fatalistic view of the facts are all we need. And for me, I think this is going to come about in healthcare a lot. I can tell you that studies are not everything, right? Information is limited, always. And so what do we have beyond what a study can show us? I think that is a theme that is going to be coming up a lot in healthcare, as well as other changes that are going to be happening in the system. Hopefully they're for the better, who knows? But that's what I just want to mention too, is that you might see this pulling away from any and rejecting any sense of spirituality, and using those like fake gurus as a reason as to why. So trying to have this embodied and grounded sense of spirituality could be a real guiding light for a lot of people who may not naturally move towards spirituality. It might really help everyone on their evolutionary process. Who knows? I'm just another person giving advice here based on my knowledge and experience. So let me know what you guys think. What house is this falling in for you? Are you having a nodal return or a nodal reversal? And yeah, just let me know your thoughts. I love to hear from you guys, and I will see you next time.